Becoming a successful player isn't easy. Even if you thrive in a developmental system, nothing guarantees that future injuries won't cap your potential or that bad choices won't lead you down a road of disappointment or, in many cases, both at the same time. In the long run, many of these young ballers end up like the average guy, just working an average job, while many can't overcome the loss of their dream and end up bitter and consumed by their vices. Today, I'm going to talk about the success story. In this video, we'll analyze the rise of Cândido Costa, how he overcame devastating injuries, an underwhelming career, and even unemployment to become the face of Portuguese football. So, as usual, let me give you some context. Cândido Costa was born in São João da Madeira on April 30th, 1981. Coming from humble beginnings, football quickly became his outlet, a way to express himself, to prove his worth. And let me tell you, he wasn't just another talented kid. Even while playing for his local side São Joanense, which at the time was just a modest club, Cândido was already being called up to Portugal's youth national teams. Something incredibly rare back then and even today. That achievement only brought more attention his way, and finally sparked serious interest in a kid who had already been shining in youth tournaments for years. But despite his young age, Cândido was already carrying a huge grudge against the club he loved. After trying his luck at Porto's training center one day, he was shown the door. So, when the time came to choose between Porto and Benfica, the decision was easy. The young prodigy moved to the capital, and despite a promising start, he suffered a serious injury to his dominant foot. At that age, it was a massive setback. Cândido genuinely thought it could be the end. I mean, imagine being far from your family, unable to do what you love most, with no guarantees about your future. But he got through it, and what followed became the golden chapter of his footballing life. He captained Benfica's youth team to a national title, won against Porto at the Antas. He captained Portugal's under-18s to the European Championship title in 1999. Cândido had the world at his feet, and amid all that success came a knock on the door from Jorge Mendes, offering a deal that a less bitter, slightly more mature young man simply couldn't refuse. Porto wanted him. Not just interested, they wanted him. And they had a plan. So, despite still having a year left at youth level, Cândido signed with Salgueiros in 1999 to prepare for his Porto move the following season. And well, if we're talking silverware, it's safe to say Cândido fulfilled his dream. He won a Portuguese Cup, a Super Cup, and was part of the squad that achieved the domestic double and lifted the UEFA Cup. Still, despite being that kind of fiery winger who on his day could come off the bench and change the game, he never found enough consistency to be more than that. So he was loaned out. First to Vitória Setúbal, then to Derby County in England. He left both stints with his reputation intact, especially after a solid run in the championship. But it wasn't enough for Porto to give him another shot in the post-Mourinho era. Next came Braga. A slightly downgrade compared to what his youth career had promised, but it was also the perfect chance to establish himself at a Primeira Liga club trying to break into another level. Things started off well in Braga, but as the months passed, his influence faded. By the 2005-06 season, it was back to the bench. At that point, Cândido was no longer a bright young prospect. He was 25, and he'd already failed to stick at both Porto and Braga. What came next could either be the end or the rebirth of a once promising midfielder. For me, the summer of 2006 was pure innocence, the excitement of a kid who just discovered his true passion. But for Cândido, it was a summer of agony and uncertainty until right at the end of the transfer window, Jorge Jesus gave him a call. Cândido didn't even know if Belenenses, the club he was about to join, would be playing the first or second division, but it was a chance to leave his mark on a historic Portuguese side. He accepted, and while the spotlight was already shifting elsewhere, it was at Restelo that we finally saw the most consistent version of Cândido Costa. By this point, he was no longer a flashy winger. He was now a gritty right-back, the kind who'd eat grass if it meant helping the team. The kind of player who fit perfectly into a Jorge Jesus system. Fierce, disciplined, reliable, the classic good soldier. But as a key figure at Belenenses, Cândido was one of the club's highest earners. So when they were relegated in 2010, the club could barely afford to pay him, let alone keep him. Still, without ever making a fuss about unpaid wages or questioning the club's integrity, Cândido accepted an offer to move to Romania, to play in a footballing world completely different to the one he knew. Unfortunately, things didn't go well. And returning to Portugal at 32, overweight, and with a list of injuries longer than Zezé Camaringa's list of hookups, things weren't gonna be easy. He didn't come back to be a top-flight star. He came back as just that veteran at the second-tier side. First at Oca, then Tondela, and just 1 year after his return, it dropped down to third-tier football with São João Ver, and eventually the district leagues with Overcame. From driving top-end cars to a Fiat Punto that, in his own words, felt more like a lawnmower, from living the dream to facing the harsh reality of being a divorced man just trying to be a good father. Many people would have thrown in the towel, complained that life was unfair, but Cândido had the humility to realize there was life beyond football. So he stood in line at the job center, applied for unemployment benefits just to stay afloat, finished high school, got a degree in event management, but most importantly, he rediscovered who he was. Because when you're so wrapped up in something for so long, it's hard to separate your personality from your career. And when he hit rock bottom, he realized something. The joy of scoring a goal or lifting a trophy is the same as being elected class rep. It's all about perspective, but this video isn't about Cândido became a party planning master. The truth is, his name is what got him a shot on TV. More specifically, Portuguese. A small channel really, that didn't even pay him for his early appearances, but they offered something more valuable: experience, and a chance to show off his true personality. And that presence, that charisma, led him to getting an opportunity at TV, one of Portugal's biggest networks. Until the early 2010s, it was rare to see a former footballer go public about his own shortcomings, openly, humbly, with the down-to-earth attitude of a regular Portuguese football fan. That honesty made him relatable. And when he moved to Canal 11, a project by the Portuguese Football Federation and no longer tied to Porto, that's when his popularity exploded. The Jorge Jesus impressions, the iconic stories about tires, autograph mix-ups with Joaquim, Costinha's legendary cream, and of course, the story about the second most iconic fight that was never seen, Jorge Jesus versus 50 Cent. He made me laugh out loud, and millions of other Portuguese fans too. Some remember his football career, others only knew him as that funny, lovable guy who pulled back the curtain on the fantasy world of Portuguese football. His talent for storytelling and entertaining the public became undeniable, and before we even realized it, Cândido was everywhere. TV ads, mainstream shows, and even though the peak of his popularity has passed, his name is still growing. The truth is, Portuguese football needed someone like Cândido. We just didn't know it. Back in the 2010s, football content was all about controversy, referee debates, and straight up screaming matches. And don't get me wrong, for someone like me, who grew up during that time watching Pedro Guerra, Manuel Mourão, José de Pina, and others act like maniacs, that is nostalgic. But let's be honest, it was toxic, and Cândido Costa's influence brought a breath of fresh air to the Portuguese football media landscape. After Cândido came Ucra, another ex-player who I believe will find way more success as an entertainer than he ever did on the pitch. And I think it's safe to say that this is only the beginning. We see it abroad too, like the banter between Michael Richards and Thierry Henry, who is now called just Titi, or even before that, the back and forth between Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher. We're moving away from controversy for controversy's sake, and from the kind of overly technical analysis that puts casual fans to sleep. Cândido, in a humble, genuine way, was ahead of the curve, and now is reaping the rewards. Even before the idea of making this video crossed my mind, I used to say, through tears of laughter, that if there was one guy I hoped would get the recognition he deserved, it was Cândido Costa. And now, nearly 3 years after launching this channel, I can finally say it publicly. Thank you for everything you've done, Cândido. I hope that one day I can contribute to Portuguese football the way you continue to do. And what about you? Did you already know about Cândido Costa's football past? If so, let me know what you remember about him in the comments. And if not, good news, you just found the perfect channel to learn more about Portuguese football. Here at Throne FC, we bring you unique analysis and deep dives into both the past and present of Portuguese football. Like this video here about the most dramatic title race I've ever seen. In a season where the stars were Quaresma, Micoli and Nani, the big three went head to head right down to the final round. And any of them could have ended up champions. Go watch that video. I'll see you there.